the major problems I have with NASA's policy of training astronauts in a gigantic swimming pool. And really the only alleged benefit of training underwater in a pool, they say, is that it simulates zero gravity. Well, actually, it doesn't even simulate zero G. It only simulates zero G on camera, in a video, making videos, but not in practice. To summarize why training underwater is a complete fail, I made a list of 8 problems with training underwater as opposed to training with something like a zero-G wire system in a warehouse. So here we go. Number 1, pressure underwater is the complete opposite of the vacuum of space. Underwater, the pressure is extremely high and will compress, it'll crush you with extreme force. In a vacuum, pressure is extremely low, there's no pressure, and you will explode. Your spacecraft will explode with the extreme force, and it will do so outward, the opposite direction of underwater. So why in the world would you train under conditions that are opposite those in which you will be working? This makes no sense at all. Total fail. Number 2, resistance in movement. Underwater, moving around and pushing off of things will be much slower and tedious as opposed to the vacuum of space. At least if training is done in a warehouse on wires, there will be less resistance, which is at least closer to the complete lack of resistance in space. Water is the exact opposite of a vacuum. There's a great deal of resistance when you move around underwater. Number 3, it makes no sense to construct a full-scale model of the ISS underwater. An ISS replica could easily be constructed in a large warehouse or a hangar. It would be much easier to build, maintain, modify, etc. This is just silly to do it underwater. Number 4, teams of safety divers and camera crews must also risk their lives underwater for astronaut training, with the unnecessary burdens of tanks, gear, tools, parts, cameras, production equipment, etc. Instructors could be more helpful in a normal environment with astronauts on wires in a warehouse. It would also be easier for the camera crews to fake it. Number 5, it costs millions to maintain the gigantic swimming pool. The underwater ISS model, the crews, equipment, it would be a fraction of the cost to use a warehouse with wires and a normal ISS replica. Common sense. Number 6, the performance and integrity of a spacesuit underwater is going to be the opposite of how it would perform and hold up in a vacuum. Training on wires at normal atmospheric pressure would at least be closer to movement in a vacuum than underwater, and how a spacesuit would react. A real vacuum chamber testing would be the best, but again, training underwater makes no sense. Number 7, weight distribution, inertia, movement, and reactions would be completely different underwater. Training to move and work with zero-G wire systems in a normal atmosphere would be closer to the alleged vacuum of space. Number 8, spacesuits, gear, tools, equipment, spare parts, etc. are all designed for use in space, in a vacuum, not underwater. Tools such as drills, wrenches, hammers, bolts, quick releases, they would all behave completely differently underwater. This makes no sense to train to use these underwater.
I'm astonished by how difficult it is to actually move around. The idea, like from the movie Gravity, that you could like reach out and grab something with one of these gloves? No way. Not gonna happen.
So, there are no benefits to training underwater, in my opinion. But there are many disadvantages and outright dangerous issues if you train underwater. The better option would be to train on the ground in a warehouse with wires just like they do in the movies. They can simulate zero-G just fine with puppeteers and wire systems. They can do this in a normal atmosphere with less resistance than underwater, so at least it's a little closer to moving around in space and operating and fixing things in space, if it was reality. So anyways, I mean, we know why they train in a pool. It's for the simple reason that on camera, floating around in a pool has the appearance of floating in space. That's it. Otherwise, it makes no sense whatsoever to train underwater. In fact, it's just silly and foolish. But we don't use our brains and ask questions about what they do with our hard-earned money. We just see it on the news and we believe it.